soup bowl today, and it's like a chicken kind of soup with some green beans, lentils, carrots, yellow flesh potatoes, and wild rice. I think that's about it. And I'm having a kind of Buddha bowl. And both of our meals are very exciting. We're going to be talking about it. Well, I'm going to be reviewing Mark Morris's Longbarrow. And James going to eat some garlic bread with his stuff. Oh, I was going to mention this. Like, we're getting a lot of produce right now, and people may not be aware of it, but a lot of our produce, you might think, oh, well, it says Alpine something in the label, or the brand name. Well, it's not. It's a product of Mexico. And if you look on the back, it says that...
So in other words, it doesn't come from the Alps. Of course, we can say Alpine, it means something to do with the mountains.
Mountains. And so...
so there are lots of mountains.
You can look on the back, and it's actually packaged in Florida.
Wow,
so it went from Mexico to Florida and then came here. And it's a monumental waste of resources, I suppose, but...
they say the average bit of food, it might be exaggerated, it travels 2,000 miles in North America. That's from here to Toronto, for example.
But, I mean, one thing that might be good about this, like the hemp seeds that I put on my salad, the hemp hearts, they're... you can put it on this here.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
I was looking for some place to put it. Just kind of woke up.
The hemp hearts come from Manitoba, and so they're Canadian. You can put those on your soup if you want to.
The hemp hearts.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's...
so it comes from Manitoba, eh?
Yeah.
Let's see, where in Manitoba? I've kind of been through.
Okay.
You worked for a while in Manitoba one summer. I've kind of got fond memories of Manitoba.
Yeah, it was great.
When I was a kid, I liked Leo Lewis, and my favorite football team was the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
I liked working there. The
Winnipeg, Manitoba.
The department I worked for, they were good people.
Yeah, they treated you nicely. That is not a guaranteed thing for you or for me.
I would have liked to stay there, but
employers.
I came back here, and that was done.
Yeah, the folks you were working with seemed quite civilized. There was one guy who was, I won't mention a name, but he specialized, he was getting education in, or he just finished it up, and he was a grad student.
Yeah, he turned me on to the Orchid Society there in Manitoba, which was
they were very civilized,
they were great.
He went on hikes and stuff like that with them. But he specialized in dendrochronology. So really a learned fellow. I think he at least finished up a master's degree and stuff like that. So yeah, they treated you right. So
I made James's soup a little bit differently today because I wanted to make my salad with some of the ingredients. So I cooked the wild rice in the rice cooker, and then I put some sliced carrots and green beans in the steamer basket above, and I cooked those things separately. And then I cooked I had already cooked the potatoes, like I baked them yesterday and stuff like that, and I left the peppers fresh so that he could get as much vitamin C out of them as possible when I put them on. But so everything was just, it needed to be heated up, that's all. The lentils were already cooked, the rice, the brown basmati was already cooked for his soup. Everything was already cooked. And then I just added the broth into a pot with the potatoes and stuff that were reheated from yesterday, and that's the soup. I put a little bit of pink salt, Himalayan pink salt, with it, and that's it. So it's not a very exciting soup. It's like I didn't put parsley, sage, rosemary, thyme, anything like that.
It's got the hemp parts now. It's got the hemp parts now.
Yes, it has a lot of fun things, but not spices.
There we go. I'm not a big fan of spices. I like them pretty well, more than I
Mhm.
used to, particularly when I was having trouble with cancer. So for about 10 years, I had trouble with one of the symptoms of multiple myeloma, several, but GERD. But my remission is working so well that I'm not having that much trouble with GERD. It's amazing. So it looks as though I'm in pretty deep remission. So I've got multiple myeloma, and one of the possible symptoms is GERD from the hypercalcemia. Yeah, hypercalcemia. You get too much calcium in your system, and it causes indigestion. It's bad indigestion. It's like one doctor said to me, I know what it'd be like. It's like you're on fire inside. So, it's not like, and it goes on and on and on. It's not as though it's after you eat something, it goes on and on and on.
So my salad. So I put the steamed carrots and wild rice and green beans in my bowl, and I mixed that up while it was hot with or fairly warm, with the tahini so that it would all spread through nicely. And I put the juice of a lime and about 2 cloves of garlic minced up in there. And so I mixed that up really well. And then I added a whole bunch of other things. So the lentils, cooked lentils, and purple cabbage, shredded up, and cilantro, and romaine lettuce, the peppers, the sliced pimento peppers, some apple, and sunflower seeds and hemp seeds. And I think that's it. A lot of stuff anyway. And yeah, so I mixed that up really well, and this is my salad. It's very good.
Yeah, it tastes very nice.
So we have 2 very different flavors of meals.
Yeah, Pauline wouldn't
Very
be able to
different.
stand the
No, I wouldn't do the chicken broth.
I understand it's the chicken broth, and it was given to us. There's no way
No, it
we
was
would
free.
buy.
I was very
would
thankful to
buy
get it.
anything
James
to
is
do with
willing to
chicken
eat it
product.
with
Yeah.
soup, so
Yeah,
that works out great.
It would be, if it were just the broth by itself, I think it would turn my stomach.
And plus, I mean, whenever I make him soup in a bread bowl like this, it seems really high class. Seems really fancy.
It is really good.
So, anyway. So it all worked out. It's great. Now, first, before I eat, my salad can wait because it's cool out here and it's salad. It's a cool salad, so I don't need to really worry about my stuff getting cold while I'm chatting. So I'm gonna go over Longbarrow. I have some food in my cheeks. It's a little chipmunk. Try to get it out. The first part of the story is the story of Susan and David, and is labeled as such. The story does get back to them, as they are the main characters, but takes a detour and tells the reader stories of many of the townspeople. I didn't care for this at first. After reading about Susan and David, I felt confused, wondering if I was reading the same story, because I put the bookmark in, went away for a while, came back, and I'm like, I don't know these characters and what's going on here. Where are my main characters? So anyway, however, after a time the story fell into place, and what a story it was. I would have loved reading this when I was really into Stephen King between ages 10 and 13. I enjoyed reading it now. I sort of felt like I was reading this story with young Pauline. So the story introduces the reader to magical forces which eventually result in the deaths of many people. And I think without having been introduced to some of the characters, some of the townsfolk after the Susan and David part, then I think maybe all of the deaths would have seemed just too much. It would have been like, oh gosh, yeah. But when you're introduced to the town folks, and I mean, they're flaws, right? They're not. Anyway, you kind of accept it a little bit better. So I'll read a few parts. So this is page 401. So we're getting near the end here. So if you don't want, if you want to read this first, you might want to, because I mean, I've already told you a lot of people died, but it's still worth reading, whatever. This isn't really a spoiler alert, because I mean, horror, you know, people are going to die and stuff, right? So anyway, so this is a part where I think, Mr. Toot was speaking to Lucy. So why couldn't you have done something about it then? Lucy asked quietly. Why couldn't you have destroyed it, nipped it in the bud before all this? She wafted a hand in the air. All this happened. Mr. Toot regarded her steadily, serenely. Because it had to happen. Sooner or later, there had to be a final battle. Besides, how do you destroy something that is not yet truly born? Uneasily, Lucy placed a hand on her stomach, thinking about her baby. Abort it? She suggested. Mr. Toot smiled. You can't abort dreams and illusions. You can't destroy energy that comes and goes like a wish or a thought or a phantom. But if you knew it was going to happen, surely you could have done something. I mean, so many people have died. Lucy was not angry, but she was insistent. Jake glanced at Mr. Toot in the mirror again. He had never seen the little grocer look more serious. The magic was leaking out, Mr. Toot said. The enchantment was coming to an end. Trapping the seven in sleep was only a temporary measure. I'm going to go to page 433. And this time he's talking with Susan, and she's mad. You knew this was going to happen, didn't you? All this death and destruction, you knew it, and you didn't do anything to stop it. It was inevitable, Mr. Toot said calmly. This was the best way, the only way. .437. Mr. Toot smiled. If you had a vial of some terrible virus, Susan, something that could wipe out millions of people if it was ever released, what would you do with it? So, this seems like the perfect horror movie to read during this pandemic. And remember to drink plenty of fresh, clean water to restore your health. It's a little joke from the story. So, but seriously, drink plenty of fresh, clean water. I was thinking the other day, I had a bad day. I had a bad couple of days, actually. And I was thinking what I need to do, and I told James this, is I need to make a sign and tape it to my door, saying, remember, you're amazingly wealthy because you have fresh, clean water to drink. You have healthy food to eat, and you have a nice warm house to keep you safe in the winter. You know, and really, when it comes down to it, what else do we need? You know, we need, we can get down about corruption in government or corruption in industry and like the revolving door between government and industry, and we can get down about this pandemic, which, I mean, it's natural to feel that way, especially when you're a sane person who's hearing people talk about, oh yeah, now that this pandemic's over. Oh wait, we've heard this before. Remember? We've heard this before.
And again,
and it's not over, and we know that it's not over, yet the aggressive propagandists are marketing it as winding to an end. And it's like, based on what? What information? It's still going, you know?
Delusions, illusions.
So, and they're talking about how things are going to go up in price now and stuff like that, and we mention that right away. Because of what the truckers are doing if Trudeau doesn't shut them down. And
I understand a lot of it is in the responsibility of the cities and really the provinces, like Ottawa.
yeah, but Jason Kenney is trying to make it so that cities can't set up COVID regulations for themselves.
Oh, he's an absolute skunk. So apparently next week he's going to be. Is it next week getting rid of masking in schools?
Yeah, March is going to be.
And he's not allowing different school boards to come up with their own masking mandates.
But like
He's an absolute killer.
Susan and, I mean, you may know beforehand what's going to happen. It's like we do. And it's really unrealistic for, like, Lucy is just a teenager in this story. So people like Lucy, well, you're most aggressive when you're a teenager, when you're, well, ages 15 to 25. And you're more likely to support really radical, aggressive propagandists, movements and stuff like that.
Doesn't matter if it's right, left, or center, radical.
So you do not make wise choices before your prefrontal cortex is finished being developed. You're not an adult. You're adult size when you're 15 to 25. You are not an adult yet. And really, I mean, how can you fault teenagers like Lucy in the story for getting upset with Mr. Toot and saying, well, if you knew this was going to happen, why didn't you stop it? And it's like, wow, that's a bit much for people to be coming down on the guy who's been helping them all along, you know, and who ends up sacrificing himself, spoiler alert, to help them and help people in the future. So anyway, during this pandemic, there's probably a lot of people that are saying, well, why didn't you say something earlier? Well, earlier when? Like, if you say it too early, then everybody will be saying, oh, conspiracy theory, and you're shut down right away. So, and if you say it too late, well, what's the point of that too, right? But at the same time, I mean, either way, the public's really not eager to listen to people who actually know what's going on, who can see what's going on based on historical data and from, you know, or trends from elsewhere or things that have happened in the past. I mean, the key to the future is the past. And anybody who says, oh, well, aggressive propagandists or whatever term you want to give them.
It's not four-letter stuff, even though they deserve it. But you know.
Well, they look to the future. You know, they're really optimistic and they think the future. And it's like, whoa, no, they do not.
Or they
have no idea what's going on in the future. Their future is an illusion. And if you follow them, you don't have a happy future.
There are some who are claimed to be environmentalists, like young kids that maintain, I don't know how long they stick to it, that they're not going to have kids because the environment's just going to go to hell.
Yeah, I used to think that way too when I was young. I was convinced of that. Oh yes, if you care about the environment, don't have children. No, if you care about the environment, you should have children. You should have at least one.
Because
and no more than two.
Are driving the environment into the toilet are people overpopulating the world. Mm-hmm. So that's Mick Jagger, Rod Stewart.
They're not going to stop having children. They don't care about the environment. So what happens a generation or two down the road, if everyone who cares about the environment stops having children. It doesn't take a brainiac to figure it out. And we keep importing more people from places where they have a younger
demographic.
Because so they come in, they have lots of children when they're young, lots of children when they're young. So then we'll end up with a younger demographic. Okay. Who do they vote for? If you have a population of people with a younger demographic, do you have a more stable, civilized society, or do you have an aggressive, radical, violent society? It doesn't take a genius to figure that out.
It's
and
well
who are they voting for? They're going to vote for more aggressive people.
Most warlike societies over decades have been ones with a younger profile, like Germany, for example. One reason why it's a little bit more civilized than it was in the 30s and 40s of the last century is because they've got a much older demographic profile, shall we call it. So on CBC they had a feed, I think from ABC, possibly Australia, overnight, and they were talking about passports, and they had a sociologist, I think that one might have been from the City University of New York, and another flunky from North America, I'm not sure exactly where, several people it sounded like from Australia, maybe from Sydney and stuff like that, and they were looking at passports, and oh my heavens, according to them, passports started in World War I, and they were focusing on the Brits and Americans, and the Australians. Oh, it's horrible stuff. I knew it was building towards it. I had to move, get a shower or something like that, but so I couldn't listen to it all. Not that I wanted to. I read and listen to so much stuff that's just garbage. Now, what they were saying was, they eventually caught up to something like the security states of the the dictatorial countries. I'm going, then how did it start in World War I? In other countries, they had it. In the dictatorial countries. So, one of the things that lefties and a few other people like yipping and yapping and gibbering and jabbering about security state. Let's get rid of it. It's awful. United States, after World War II especially, they just decided they were going to have a security state. It was kind of necessary because there were things called hydrogen bombs within a very short order after World War II. Was it the Americans' choice to have atomic bombs and hydrogen bombs? They were going to be developed during World War II. The Americans were working on it. The Brits were working on it. Some Canadians were probably working on it too. And the democratic countries were able to pool their resources to develop the things together because they kind of could trust each other not to use them on each other. Democracy kind of works. Mm-hmm. Whereas the Germans and the Russians, and yes, the Japanese, they had their own little project.
Well, democracy works where the people are civilized.
Yeah, we're going to use that term, civilized.
You're going to use it.
The Germans during the 30s and 40s were not civilized. The Russians weren't civilized. Aside from the ones that George Gamow, however they want to mispronounce his name, people who were legitimate refugees. Albert Einstein, a refugee from, he came from Ulm, southwestern Germany originally. The Nazis, even before they came to power, 10 years before they came to power, put a fatwa on his head. They put a contract on his head, as is, I believe, 1923. So there were a variety of civilized people who had it out, but the culture was highly uncivilized. People's Republic of China has been highly uncivilized ever since Mao Zedong was allowed to take over in China. I think starting 1949. Highly uncivilized. When you're dealing with spies and saboteurs, real saboteurs, not Stalin, people that the Soviets called them wreckers. Yeah, they'd make up that people were saboteurs. They liked eventually going after Jews, for example. Wreckers, but real saboteurs and terrorists. You've actually got to stop folks like that, especially when you've got things like weapons of mass destruction. You've actually got to stop them from coming in. You can wreak mass destruction without actually using weapons of mass destruction. Would the Americans have taken their security state a little more seriously? How much of it was a security state when they let those flunkies, 20 or so of them, into the United States, and they were squatting in Arizona and Florida and elsewhere? I think Masawi was up in Minnesota or something like that. And the Americans were just letting them squat there. It doesn't seem like much of a security state. Wake up and smell the coffee, you stupid idiots. So they were aiming. We run into different stats. I can remember back in 2001, fall up, I was a little late getting to the restaurant where most parks workers were congregated, and they were looking at these planes going into the Twin Towers, and they were asking, "Who is it? What is it?" And I said, "It's Al Qaeda." I hadn't even heard of Al Qaeda, and I was right. And you know what they're saying? How many people are in those towers? And I said, well, I don't know. It's 100 stories roughly on each one of them. That's 200 stories in the two towers. How many people would fit on a story? Or they'd be the size of a city block, each one of these. A small city block. But so I'm going, well, I don't know. I just multiplied 50 times 200, and I came up with, that's 200 times 0, 2,000 times 5. What was I saying? 50 times 200.
Where's the 50 come from?
What was that?
Where's the 50 come from?
Just the number of people, I guess, would be on each story of the place. And I guess that comes out to 10,000 or something like that. Anyway, I actually just, there's no way I glitched on the 0. So I was going 100,000 or something like that. Turns out it was maybe 30,000. It's lucky it was early in the morning and not like noontime. And when they were aiming at 30,000, some people say there was fewer people there. I wish they'd come up with some decent documentary on it. But, when you get up around 10,000 or more, you are aiming at reproducing something like Nagasaki. And because of the asbestos in the air, you're going to have long-term complications.